Have you ever wondered what it is about reaching for our dreams that feels so hard and requires so much of our own healing? Are you curious about how moving towards your own creativity might heal what's making you feel stuck? Well, that is why we made this show. I'll be having conversations with emotional health experts as well as artists, musicians, and creatives, all with the intention of resourcing and inspiring you to uncover your true creative self. I'm Courtney Lancaster, and this is the Heal Create podcast. India, I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
this is going to be fun. I had mentioned to you earlier that I followed you for a really long time and love everything that you post and that you do. But I also, knowing this interview was coming up, I went on a deep dive this week and looked up so many of the things and the different projects that you've done. And as a vocalist, I'm just so impressed and just want to ask you so many questions about how you got to the place that you're at, not only in your life, but also just vocally, because it's absolutely incredible. So I'm really excited to talk to you today. So I want to start with your background and the early days of you just beginning to get into this. So you grew up in Brooklyn before you moved to LA, is that right?
Yep. Born and raised. I started studying at the Brooklyn Conservatory at around 2 years old, if I'm not mistaken. My mom put me in Mommy and Me percussion classes.
Yeah.
Because she heard that there's a correlation between academics and music. So she just wanted me to be good at math, which I ended up being great at math.
Really?
Yeah, actually. I was a huge
funny.
math nerd, placed out of math in college and was sad about it. But anyway, so I did that.
Hilarious.
And then I know. And then at 4 years old, I went on to, I think it was piano and flute, maybe. At some point, flute came into the picture, and then choir as well.
At 4?
Yeah, I think it might have been at 4.
Wow.
If not 4, 9, I think, for flute, because I was doing that in elementary school.
Okay.
But I did have an early start. New York City is just such an artsy city. It's easy.
Yeah.
Lots of community organizations as well. And Brooklyn is such a community-based city. So they're always just looking for people to help and work with. Tennis was another thing I was doing all around the same time. So I was just really out there and engaged in community programs going on, mostly music. And so, yeah, that's how I started. And then I think I grew to love it. Around 9 years old, I made more of a conscious decision that I like where I'm at. But yeah, I had started really, really young.
That is really, really young.
Yeah.
And you went to the famous FAME school.
LaGuardia Arts.
That's incredible. I'm sure that it's audition only, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it must be incredibly competitive to even get into.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I think it had been even more competitive way before I got there. In the 90s, early 2000s, I think it was a totally different scene. I saw the tone change as my class graduated. I don't know what the vibe is like over there. But I suppose that's just evolution and how things change over time. But it was nothing like the FAME movie, but it was reminiscent of it. And I think school there was like the FAME movie at one point, which could have been really exciting to experience. But regardless, yeah, I had an amazing time. I was doing everything known to man over there. Yeah. Any musicals, any performance classes, I was in them. Yeah. Just trying to live my life and get better.
Yeah. My son is really into theater and comedy, and he's very much like that. And I tell him some of the best days of my life, even still, I would say, were my High School Musical theater days. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is about the community, especially at that age, but it was just one of the most powerful communities that I had ever, and probably still I've ever remember being a part of. So what made you want to move to Los Angeles? Was it just UCLA that you wanted to study at, or was it being in California and LA for art?
It was wanting to be at a university with a big campus, so I could just see what that life is like, because we don't have that in New York. Columbia, I guess, is the biggest campus, but it's still like within the city. And perhaps I manifested it. I don't know. But UCLA came out of nowhere. I hadn't applied anywhere on the West Coast because I had never been here. And after doing this arts program called Young Arts, which I would recommend to any graduating high school senior,
Mm.
um, a former vocal coach who used to work with the organization reached out to me, who later became my voice coach at UCLA, and she invited me to audition, and I was like, sure. And I got here and I was like, this is the campus I was looking for. And then I think quickly it made sense that opera was also the foundation I was looking for, because in
Yeah.
most vocal programs, it's weird, like throughout middle school and high school, the curriculum is classical based. And not
Hmm.
that everything needs to go back to classical. I just saw the value for me. But once you get to college, depending on the program, you might not have classical foundation offered. So if you're doing a musical theater program, more often than not, you have to go elsewhere to find a classical teacher.
Okay.
Or a pop program. You just have to hope that the opportunities are there. And well, that sounded a little complicated to me, or complex rather. So when I was invited to audition to this opera program that had so many other opportunities on campus, being that it's a liberal arts school, that made the most sense to me. And I'm really glad I did that.
Yeah. And while you were there, you auditioned for The Voice.
Yeah, that was during my senior year. Hmm.
So, what was the schedule for that like? So, when did you audition? Was it fall?
Yeah, I think the auditions were during the fall, and it only worked out because UCLA runs on the quarter system, not semesters.
Oh,
And it
okay.
it actually worked out perfectly. I didn't need to miss too much school in the end. I missed a bit of school, but I did not drop out. I just did my homework at the hotel
Wow.
because I knew if I dropped out, I wouldn't come back, and I was so close. So, yeah, I think auditions were in the fall. That pretty much worked out. And then during our winter breaks, I'd be like filming. The first few
Wow.
rounds are already pre-recorded, and once it turned to live rounds, allowed to take off from school, be there, and then when I came back in May, I had 2 weeks left till graduation to put together my whole senior recital,
Wow.
which I
Oh my
did.
gosh. You pulled it off.
I pulled it off. Wouldn't recommend that to
Yeah.
anybody, but I did it.
Yes, just the crux of everything you've learned in the 4 or 5 years that you've been there. Wow,
Literally.
that's incredible. Well, you went
Mhm.
to be the top five on The Voice, and then
Mhm.
you went on to just do some incredible work
Thanks.
with when I was looking at the list, it was like every major pop star. Like it's like
A good chunk.
I cannot believe. So Katy Perry, Dua Lipa, Mariah Carey,
Mhm. I know.
Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, Billie Eilish, Megan Trainor. I think like there are so many amazing like memories and hard work that you've put into that and going along that journey. And I wonder, like, as you look back, I'm sure it's been listed to you in interviews or um, as you think back over the last, 10 years of everything that you've done. When you think back about your 20s being just pretty remarkable in the work that you've been able to do. Does it feel like pride? Does it feel like lessons, good memories, and bad? What does it feel to look back on your body of work so far?
That's a good question. I think looking back with friends and then like interviews like this helps me
Mm-hmm.
reflect on them, because
Mm.
I'm incredibly hard on myself and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Mm.
Um Perhaps it would be good for that to change, but I
Mm.
don't see that changing anytime soon. So I don't diminish the value of the work I've put in over the years, but I'm always looking for what's coming next,
Mm.
because I never quite feel settled.
Mm-hmm.
So reflecting with friends, reminding me that that's a big accomplishment I just did, even though it's like everyday life for me. I guess that's just with anything in life. Once you've been doing it for a while, it just becomes more routine and you start to forget that there's so much value attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so having people like you say, remind me of these things,
Yeah.
helps me remember how cool it is. And I didn't even see it as being part of the dream. I came out here to be a solo artist, which I'm still doing, but I never saw myself like going on tour with Katy Perry like that. And I'm so glad I did. When I really just take an intentional moment to sit and reflect, I'm incredibly
Mm.
proud of the work I've done, and perhaps I should just make that more of a routine to sit and reflect
Mm-hmm.
like that. Because I forget for sure.
Yeah, I think that we all do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about why you're hard on yourself.
To be honest, I have no idea. I think a lot of it comes down to New York mentality. We're just very driven
Ah,
people and we're always going. There's always something else to do. I definitely get restless if I've been sitting for too long, but it also intersects to my personal life as well. I don't know why I'm
mm,
so hard on myself, but I just think like if I'm going to do something, just be the best I can be at it. So I guess if we're talking about music, I'm hard on myself because I see the ways that I can improve and I'd like to. Especially if I'm going to sit here having opinions of like music I like and like you should use this technique or da da da. I should be doing that work on myself too. Um and perhaps that's too harsh of a way to look at it, but it works for me. I don't think less of myself pushing myself harder. Some people
right.
might. That might be too heavy for some people, but I can
Mm-hmm.
handle that.
I think I hear what you're saying, and I would agree. So I think so many artists, we actually really do need a very strong kind of like internal parent, or that coach inside that's going to help us do the things that aren't flowy and artistic and creative,
Mm-hmm.
like to really drive us forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so few creatives actually have that. And that's why there are a lot of
Mm.
creatives that aren't putting a lot of things out into the world, because they need a part of themselves to drive them, to move them forward, like a good parent would. Like,
Yeah.
as much as I love my kids to have fun and do all the things they love to do, somebody needs to tell them when to go to bed, when to do
Mm-hmm.
their homework, when to do the things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I feel with my creative side as well. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's great to dream about doing all the things you need to do, but we actually need to implement and move forward. And
Absolutely.
so there's like a fine line between the part of you that's like, you can do this and it's time and you need to, like, it was really beautiful that you've done all this, but like there's more for you and we're moving to the more. And
Mm-hmm.
then that flipping into like critical, judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
even for some people, self-hatred. And there's
Mm-hmm.
like, sometimes you miss when you overstep the line.
Mm-hmm.
That strong disciplinarian part of me actually just turned into a really mean bully.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful either. Well, I
Yeah.
love you posted something on Instagram, encouraged people to give themselves permission to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw when you got up a minute ago that it's like on your wall behind you,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Give yourself
Yeah.
permission to be good. And I'm curious about, why do you think people don't give themselves permission to be good?
Well, let me start this off with a disclaimer because sometimes when I share this, people have the wrong impression of the quote.
Hmm.
Perhaps reading deeper into the word good, what does it mean to be good? Is that like subconscious like control that we should all be the same definition of good?
Hmm.
Um, give yourself permission to be good to me, and the way that I was taught it is just don't stand in your own way. Don't sabotage
Yes.
yourself. If we're
Yeah.
talking about you're a musician, go be a great musician. I have had countless moments in my life where I will step down because I want to keep the peace. And give
Mm.
yourself permission to be good just says, no, take the gig. Take the gig.
Hmm.
There's room for everybody and you'll all figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So a lot of people, especially creatives, identify as people pleasers, and that's a huge reason why people want to step down and be as invisible as possible. I
Mm.
think it also stems from a lack of self-confidence. At least that's how I experienced it. I was confusing confidence with being cocky, and I didn't want to be cocky.
Mm.
And so I was like, well, if I love how I sound today, I must be full of myself. So
Yeah.
over some time of reworking that thought pattern, I understood that confidence is totally different. And
Yeah.
confidence is what is going to allow you to step on stage and do your best, because you doing your best on stage has nothing to do with anybody else, literally.
Yeah. Right.
Unless somebody else makes it about themselves, but that's still not your problem.
Yes.
So sometimes for a time, and even now, sometimes I have to move with blinders on. Um, so long as I know I am doing the best that I can, I'm not hurting anybody. That's the bare. That's like the overall of what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So yeah, there are a number of reasons why we step in our own way. Oh yeah, fear. Just fear of like, oh, what if it actually happens? I don't think I've ever been afraid, but I have been standing in my own way for a long time. I just realized. So here we are.
Yeah, right. Well, it's
Hmm.
that Marianne Williams quote, right? Like, we're not actually afraid of our weaknesses, we're afraid of our own greatness.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And cockiness, I think it is confused with that
Hmm.
idea of confidence, but cockiness comes from scarcity. Like, I got to be better than
Hmm.
everyone else because there's only
Right.
so much to go around.
Right.
And confidence comes from abundance. Like, there is
Hmm.
enough room for all of us to be
Hmm.
great.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the things that I work with a lot with people is all of the stories that they create that really keep themselves from moving into their greatness, because it
Hmm.
means a lot to be in your greatness. It really means you're going to be seen by a lot of people, which is incredibly scary if you have any kind of, pain or trauma associated with that, which so many of us do.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering about this idea of not wanting to step towards our greatness for you. How have you worked through those seasons of resistance in your own life as you've moved towards your dreams and creating the things that you're here to create?
I think it's a mixture of, I might have mentioned it before, talking to your friends, getting
Mm,
their perspective, outside perspective from someone who knows you well,
mm-hmm.
um, and learning who I am, which is an ongoing process. But the more I know who I am, what my intentions are, what brings me joy, and what I feel I'm here to do, it's easier to tap into that.
Yeah.
Um, my mom would talk about like I know who I am a lot, and I never really understood it. It sounded kind of like she might be alienating herself from as much of the world as she could. It just sounded like a very just individual mindset thing. And over time, as I've been tested and like I have not set boundaries, I'm unhappy and I don't know why, or my energy is drained and I don't know why. It's because I don't really know who I am in this moment. I don't know why I'm here. I'm not acting as intentionally as I thought I would. I'm acting in other people's interests.
Mm.
And that's not really sustainable. So I think, yeah, I've worked through it through trying to just tap in more to you have a gut, like intuition is a real thing. And your body will lead you towards where you need to go, and it'll tell you when you need to leave a situation, and it's just up to you to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I think tapping more into my soul and my core has helped me change my mindset on that. Also, talking to friends. I had a conversation with one of my oldest friends the other day, and I think we might have been talking about purpose or something. I was expressing that I had some doubt recently, and he was like, "Listen, whenever you're feeling those feelings, remember that you make people feel things."
Mm,
Um, and that's the biggest takeaway from your content and your shows and just like whatever you give to people, you make them feel something. And that
that's right.
reminded me that that's actually why I do this.
Yes. Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
so that those two things help
Mm-hmm.
balance me and step into greatness. If I'm not affecting people positively, which is my purpose, then what am I singing for? What am I just like blindly giving this song to? So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I can relate to that as well. I think I write that down every day. Every day I write down like who I am, like in a few
Mm-hmm.
different sentences, and that's one of the phrases that I write down is I make music that moves people.
Yeah.
And I think for creatives, one of the reasons why I feel so passionately about supporting creatives is because when you are moved by art, you're actually experiencing a moment of connection and safety. And when you're in connection, safety, and inspiration, that's when you are getting a glimpse of your true self.
Yeah.
So when artists are sharing their art and you are moving people and you do make people feel things with your music, India, it's
Thank
actually
you.
giving them a glimpse of who they really are,
Mm.
which is why I think we need artists now more than ever, healthy artists.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been really interested to see what's happened to a lot of creative communities since 2020,
Mm-hmm.
when so many of the performers had to stop performing. So
Yeah.
many of the people that were, moving with a lot of momentum, big artists that were
Mm-hmm.
moving with a lot of momentum that had to just stop. And I think there was a lot of purpose to that. I think we'll probably look back and all see like so much growth and purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
but it was difficult, I think, because a lot of artists, a lot of people in general, had to kind of see what was underneath all the running that they were doing,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of like emotional healing, I think they were invited to in that
Yeah.
season. I think that I've seen a lot of creatives and performers come back into their craft and their performance. It seems like there's been some interesting resistance. Like there was a major, I think it was Shawn Mendes that canceled his
Mm-hmm.
entire world tour for mental health.
Yeah.
There's so many things that have happened like that. I just moved to Orange County,
Mm-hmm.
and as soon as we moved here, knowing we were close to LA, we bought tickets like for the year ahead of like all these different concerts. And I would say probably a quarter of them have been canceled.
Wow.
Yeah, for different like mental health, personal, physical health reasons. And I just
Mm-hmm.
think, gosh, that's so interesting. We're noticing we can't carry on the same way that we did, overriding our nervous systems, overriding our emotional health in order to keep creating. We have to come
Yeah.
up with sustainable ways to create so that we
Mm-hmm.
can inspire people to catch glimpses of their authentic self. So,
Absolutely.
all that being said, I'm curious how 2020 affected you as a performer and a creator.
Actually, 2020 was really positive for me. Looking
Mm,
back overall, I think the first part of 2020 only kept me quiet because of all the racial protests
mm-hmm.
going on. That's actually what hit me more than the fact that all my gigs were canceled.
Yeah.
I was actually coming back from an ongoing tour, so I could have used some relaxation time.
Yeah.
That was probably the least relaxed time in our lives, but just a moment where the world forced you to stop, I think was welcome for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, everything with Black Lives Matter really, really got to me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I was definitely down very often.
Of
Sometimes
course.
led to tears after watching these headlines. It's just like, you guys think this is a joke? So that led me to write
Mm,
Human, which was the first
mm-hmm.
single I think that I've ever put out. I have some music online, but they haven't really like stemmed from me. Human was the first time I really like put my time and energy into a single and finally put it out. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think lockdown actually allowed me to open the gates to finally stop being a perfectionist and just put the music out.
Yeah. Yes.
And in addition to that, because all my gigs were canceled and people were doing a lot of stuff from home, I took to engineering and learned how to record myself and have my own setup at home. And then that started all the acapella videos that I've been doing. I
Yeah.
had been doing them before, but upping the audio and video quality started during lockdown.
Yeah.
And so since then, I've gotten so much better at recording myself, engineering myself from home, and it's led me to so many other opportunities. So
Yeah.
I'm really sad we got hit with COVID. There's nothing about this that is good for us, but
Right.
I think a lot of creative people have been forced to add some more skills to their resume, look
Hmm.
inward, and come out with something great.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree that the flip side of that is that a lot of artists have come up with work that they never would have created otherwise. They never would have seen the parts of themselves necessary to create.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like for you, Human is such a incredibly written and
Mm,
expressed song.
thank
And the
you.
vulnerability combined with the power behind it is really something incredible idea.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
just came out. It was after George Floyd, I think, maybe. And then I just took to the piano and it really just flew out. Maybe at most I took another day to write the second verse, but the whole the whole song just poured out, which I think
Yeah.
says a lot to the meaning or how much it meant to me, I guess.
No, it's absolutely stunning. It's really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
And yeah, yeah, of course. I think for me as well, like I told you earlier, wanting to even create this podcast series came from my own season of healing from anxiety and PTSD and like putting aside all my art and my music and my creativity. Like, I don't know, until I was healed or perfect or
Mhm.
whatever, and not realizing that, like, oh, I'm actually like, I'm going to heal through creation and through creativity.
Yeah.
And it's not putting it on pause. And it sounds like you writing that song and kind of even like with the acapella videos, which I want to talk to you about as well, was part of your own like healing and navigating that season as well.
Oh, surely. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
pretty on pause for a while and I was like, I got to do something. I can't be this sad looking at the news every day. So, Human started and then I just started getting back in the studio.
Yeah. Those videos, I feel like the number of times that I've sent one to a friend with just like 15 cry faces is like
Thank you.
yeah, this episode will actually come out after you put on a workshop teaching
Nice.
how to do this, right?
Cool. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I'm doing that next Saturday.
Yeah. So you're going to teach people how to like, you basically, for those of you that haven't seen it, you need to go look up India Carney on Instagram. She has these videos where you're like, it's like your beautiful face, beautifully lit, and then like tinier videos of you harmonizing to what you're singing or like
Uh-huh.
adding background.
Oh,
I
it's a lot.
ha It's so amazing though.
Thank you.
How did you even learn to do that? Was it trial and error? Like,
I guess like things started shifting into full gear in college when I joined an a cappella group. Prior to
mm,
that, I was doing this composition class in high school, and we would be writing original music all the time, performing it often, and then like the people in the class, we'd kind of like recycle roles and like sing backgrounds on other people's songs, play piano on other people's songs, whatever, just shift
okay.
roles. And so, at least in high school, I was already starting to arrange background vocals. I don't remember the level that they were at, but that might have been my well, then before that was also gospel choir and stuff.
Mm,
So the idea of ensemble singing is something I've done for a long time. Being really analytical about it came in college when I was part of my a cappella group and was writing like arrangements for 15 people, all charted out on manuscript paper, like the full deal. And then the more I did that, the more I learned how to edit and just like be more refined. And well, I didn't always enjoy arranging such large scale compositions, but it was obviously very helpful to have that skill. When I started doing my a cappella videos, I scaled it down just a little bit, just so it's a little more palatable,
mm,
um, maybe a little more appropriate for the content. If I'm
mm.
like putting out content that's just like massive Jacob Collier size, that might not be as
Yeah.
authentic for me. We love Jacob Collier.
Of
He's amazing.
course.
But
Oh my
I think for
gosh.
me, like a nice, I don't know how to
Simple.
explain it. Yeah, it's like not simple at all, but it sounds simple, and that's what I'm going for.
It's not simple at all. As a matter of fact, I feel like I have described you as literally perfect, like technically perfect. And it's smooth. It's just
Thanks.
so easy to listen to. But I know the amount of effort that you've put behind not only cultivating your vocal talent, but also these videos is so massive. So, anyways, I just want to tell everybody, please appreciate this because
Thank you.
it's absolutely incredible. I'm
Thank you so
actually
much.
really curious about that on a technical scale.
Sure.
Like I told you, I'd love to just like talk vocal technique for forever. But
Yeah.
what has been the hardest thing for you to overcome technically in the cultivation of your vocal talent?
Okay, so I guess it is finding my voice. What is my voice? And I think the other thing, I wouldn't describe it as hard to overcome, but I would say that it was eye-opening to arrive on the other side of thinking that everything dates back to technique. I think that singing is just the art of sounding pleasing to one's ear, and however, and there are millions of ways to do that because there are millions of voices out there. So what do you want to sound like? Let's hope that is at least adjacent or like in line with what most people like to listen to, even though there are a bunch of outliers. And how do we want to achieve that sound? I think that's like the core of what singing is. So for a long time, because I got my degree in opera, I was like, this is the way that you're supposed to sing. And over time, I'm like, no, it's not. There's a lot that I learned from it. I haven't hurt myself while singing. I'm great with hygiene, it seems, so far, at least. And I've learned a lot of like agility and placement things from opera. But needing to sing with that level of I don't know what the word is. I don't know if the word is health or if it's just that specific technique is unnecessary because it's not what I'm trying to go for. If I was trying to be an opera singer, yeah, I would need to be consistent with that. But no, and I thought that was like the Bible for a long time.
Yeah.
Now I understand singing is fun. Singing came from just emulating sounds that you hear. It's very subjective because I feel like it's very organic. It's just like what feels good, that's what you do. And then when you get stuck, we can maybe take to some techniques and see if that helps. I think that was a huge learning experience for me. And then finding my sound, now that was the difficult part because I was so buried in different styles of music. The main one being opera. So it was very dark covered, heavy vibrato, like blended. Especially as an alto.
It's like really dark.
Very.
Yeah.
Which isn't, I don't think that's what they want when I'm singing Katy Perry, you know, like that's not it. And then I was also doing musical theater, R&B, jazz, a lot of contemporary styles. So I thought at the time, when I first thought I found my sound, I was kind of like mismatching styles. So I'd sing Amy Winehouse and it would sound super dark and operatic. I'd be singing Rihanna with this like intense vibrato and I'm like, I'm doing it. And then I listen back and I'm like, I'm not doing it. It was fine, but like that's not refined at all. Now I understand it's like it really it goes back to knowing yourself. Everything has to come from a place of authenticity. And then underneath that, I can see, okay, I've tapped into storytelling. That's what I've taken from musical theater. I've tapped into agility and like placement and understanding where I am all the time. That's what I took from opera and so on and so forth. And I'm sure you could still hear the influences just by listening, but certainly not as obvious as it used to be like 8 years ago. And I'm really happy about that.
You also have this very unique vibrato that like is very, very you. I heard you mention one time on some interview that on The Voice, did they like try and nitpick that or something, or were they pointing it out?
No, they nitpicked the perfectionism, but and that wasn't the question you asked, but since I mentioned it, I just wanted to
No,
say,
yeah. Tell
like,
me.
a lot of us, it's I don't think it's a thing to frown upon if you identify. I think you just want better for yourself. Over time, though, I have learned, okay, if that part of my brain isn't going to stop, I just need to channel it to somewhere productive instead of beating myself up. And so that's how I've allowed myself to just grow and get better. No, it's not going to help if I sit there and I'm like, you suck. But if I'm like, the vibrato is just too wide, let's just do another pass, thin it out a little bit, and then I'll be happy and I get to move on. So
Gotcha.
just like don't try and like block off those feelings, just channel them towards somewhere else. Um, Vibrato, no, I don't think they nitpicked it, but the commenters did. I got a lot of comments and some hate online for that.
Really?
Oh yeah, like somebody was like, it sounds like my washing machine. And I'm like, okay. Does
What
it?
the heck? No. Oh my goodness.
I will say though, it took time, but over time, I was able to listen back to myself and be like, you know what? That is very derivative of opera. Maybe it isn't
Mm,
appropriate to do such a heavy vibrato all the time. I think I can dial
yeah.
it back, not because you want me to, but because I actually hear it's maybe stylistically inappropriate. But
Mm.
having to, get over the hurdle of reading all that stuff took a while.
Oh, I cannot even imagine. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I mean, well, that's why celebrities will say, like, I don't even read it. I don't even go
Yeah.
online. I
Mhm.
don't even look at it.
Mhm.
Because that stuff will just get so sticky in your brain and make you second guess everything that you're doing, which you have no reason to do, as far as I can
Thanks.
hear.
Thank you.
Okay. You also have just a couple more questions. You have a
Yeah.
show coming up.
Yes.
Yes, at Hotel Cafe in Los Angeles. And
Yes.
I'm curious about your process for preparing for a show. This is a
Mm.
show, is a solo show. Is that right?
Solo show.
Solo show, such a big deal.
I
And I'm curious,
know.
how do you prepare technically? And then how do you prepare if you need to emotionally?
Technically, I'm a very visual person, so I'll have to write out the set list, the budget, how many people, make sure everything there lines up. And then more and more, I understand the value of rehearsal and practice. I
Yeah.
think we just get used to coasting for so long,
Hmm.
and then leave a show underwhelmed. I had a moment where I was like crying after this session, and I called a mentor of mine, and he was like, "Okay, well, did you practice?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Well, then why are you crying? You got to practice."
Yes.
Um, so Uh, so I would say at least 2 rehearsals. It all comes down to budget, which makes it hard. But if you could get 2 rehearsals, ideally like 3 or 4 would make you whatever you need to feel fully confident. And for a full band setup, I would say you need a rehearsal with the band or 2, and then one with the singers, or 2 and then one all together, or 2. So it's however much you can afford. Um, and and vocally, I think my biggest focus is on pacing myself through the set. So it's hard when you're also music directing your stuff because your focus is split, which is why you want to have as many rehearsals as possible so you can get to the point of just doing you. And then when you're able to do you, the set list will start to make sense, move things around for stamina's sake. Because I know we've had our fair share of shows where the last 2 songs are just crack central. That's not fun. So maybe like put those at the top or change the key. Like so many things you can discover while rehearsing. So I would say technically, the idea is to be as aware of the full scope of the show as possible, and you'll probably only achieve that by rehearsing as much as you can. And then I think emotionally, Well, the emotional prep, I think, lines up with the warm up day of. So I need to be, I would say, like a day or two before I need to start winding down. Hopefully, my schedule isn't going. If I can just have a day of relaxation to watch Netflix, that's great. And then the
Mm,
day of, I'll probably do a good steam for like 20, maybe 30 minutes
mm,
above a pot of boiling water, start to warm up in that, stretch, maybe meditate, finish my warm up, which usually is anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes, to the point where I feel ready. Maybe go on a hike, exercise. Actually, on a perfect day, I would be exercising as
mm.
well. And altogether, I think that prep would take around 2 hours if I'm taking my time. Then I'd give myself some downtime, make sure I have help that day, an assistant of sorts or something. Um, I'm also really good at just like multitasking and handling chaos. So it would take a lot for me to get riled up anyway, but that
Yeah.
helps set me up for something good. But I know how the day's going to go by the end of that warm up.
Yeah.
And if the warm up isn't good, it's probably because I didn't sleep enough or didn't hydrate enough or was eating the
Mm.
wrong thing. So that week of I have to take all of that into consideration so that the
Yeah.
warm up's good. Yeah, and if the warm up's good, I'm so happy about life.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you have to do any like post performance like tending to your heart or your selfhood after such a big show like that.
That's a good question. I would say there's usually some decompression the day after. If it's a show I don't love, yeah, I'm gonna need to take a second in the dressing room to not tell everybody or make them take back their compliments. I do that all the time. You were so great.
Yeah.
Thanks. You should come to the next show. Like
I
I had
see.
to
Yeah.
tell myself, India, please stop.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, so I'll have to take a second by myself before going back out and just forcing myself to say thank you.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, if it's a great show, I'm ready to just go out and talk to people. I'll usually talk for a long time. I've realized I will make myself endlessly available, and
Mm,
and that's probably why the next day it would be great if I could just sit down. Definitely no singing the next day. Ideally, no
mm,
singing. Actually, after this
mm-hmm.
show, I will have to fly and sing the next day, but usually I'll try and just have it be as relaxed as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I love that. And thank you so much for everything that you've shared and how you're using your platform, not only to share your music, but also there's a lot of encouragement on there. You kind of did like a series of like how music, what is it? When
Oh yeah, music and life
music
intersect.
and life intersect. Yeah.
Yeah,
So many good
thanks.
like encouragements and life lessons. I would encourage anyone to follow her
Thank you.
for all of those reasons. How can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at India_Carney,
Okay.
Carney. That's where I mostly am. I'm also on Twitter on India Carney, India-Carney on YouTube. But Instagram is usually where I tell people to go.
Perfect. Okay. And then last question that we ask all of our guests. What is something that you are either healing in your life or creating in this season?
I'm creating new music. I'm also putting out a
Yes.
single. That's the reason for this performance in November. So I don't have a release date
Mm,
yet, but it's sometime late October, early November. And I'm really excited about it. So that's what I'm
yeah.
creating. And then I'm also creating a larger EP to put out in the new year. So
Ooh.
yeah, I'm creating that and I'm healing the part of me that insists that I don't have as much agency in my life as I should.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What does that look like as you're healing that?
It looks like it means getting comfortable saying no, setting boundaries, maybe losing people, but also tapping into the feeling of peace when those things happen. And that reminds me, oh, okay, I'm doing something right. It hurts, but it's right. Yeah, and further getting closer to knowing myself and who I am, I think starts to heal that.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Well, thank you so much again. I loved talking to you. I really appreciate everything that you have to share.
Yay,
thank you.